Life has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most. In the small town of Ridgefield, Connecticut, 42-year-old Mason Reynolds never imagined that answering a late-night phone call would change his life forever. As a widowed father struggling to raise his 10-year-old son alone, Mason had enough on his plate. But when he learned about Olivia Bennett, a 17-year-old girl who had been essentially sold by her desperate parents to pay off gambling debts, something inside him couldn't turn away. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What began as a temporary arrangement to help a teen in crisis would become the most unexpected blessing Mason could have ever imagined. This is a story about how family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up when everyone else walks away. Mason Reynolds stared at the stack of bills. On his kitchen counter, the red "Final Notice" stamps seeming to glow in the dim light. 3 years after losing his wife Caroline to cancer, he was still trying to find his footing as a single father. The medical bills had depleted their savings, and his job as a high school guidance counselor barely covered the mortgage on their modest Ridgefield home. His son Ethan's school photo smiled at him from the refrigerator, gap-toothed and innocent at 10 years old, blissfully unaware of just how tight things had become. Mason ran his hand through his graying hair and poured another cup of coffee, even though it was nearly midnight. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence, reminding him of all the hours he'd spent here alone after Ethan went to bed. The sudden ring of his phone startled him. Who would call this late? The screen showed his sister Rachel's name. "Rach, is everything okay?" he answered, immediately concerned. "Mason, I'm sorry to call so late." Rachel's voice was tense. "Something's happened at work, and I think you might be able to help." Rachel worked as a social worker at the local family services center. Mason had always admired her dedication to helping troubled kids. It was part of what had inspired him to become a guidance counselor. "What's going on?" Mason asked, his fatigue instantly forgotten. "We have a situation with a teenage girl. Her name is Olivia Bennett. She's 17. Rachel's voice dropped lower. "Her parents essentially sold her to pay off gambling debts. She was supposed to work for this man, Dale Thornton, as a housekeeper, but it was clear he had other intentions. Police picked her up walking alone on Route 7 tonight, trying to escape." Mason felt his stomach turn. "That's horrible. But how can I help?" "She needs emergency placement tonight. Our foster homes are full, and we can't find any relatives willing to take her in. Her parents are being investigated, and she refuses to go back there anyway." Rachel paused. "I remembered you have that spare bedroom since Caroline's mom moved to Florida." Mason glanced down the hallway toward the empty guest room. It had been vacant for over a year now. His mother-in-law had moved to Florida to live with her sister after Caroline died, unable to bear staying in the house where her daughter had grown up. "I don't know, Rach. I'm barely keeping it together with Ethan as it is." "It would just be temporary, Mason. A few days until we can find a more permanent placement. She has nowhere else to go tonight, and I thought, I know how much you care about helping kids in trouble." Mason closed his eyes. He thought about what Caroline would do in this situation. She'd never turn away someone in need, especially not a child. "What's she like?" he asked finally. "Scared, angry, trying not to show either. She's got walls up a mile high, but who can blame her? She's been through hell." Mason thought about the troubled teens he counseled at school. He'd always had a knack for connecting with the ones other teachers had given up on. "Okay," he said. Finally, "Bring her over, but just for a few days, Rachel. I mean it." "Thank you, Mason. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Mason hung up and looked around his kitchen with new eyes. Dirty dishes in the sink, Ethan's science project spread across half the table, the general disarray of a single-parent home. He quickly tidied up, then walked down the hall to the guest room. The room was dusty from disuse, Mason quickly put fresh sheets on the bed and opened a window to air it out. He found a clean towel and put it on the dresser, then checked the bathroom to make sure there was soap and shampoo available. When the doorbell rang, he took a deep breath before answering. Rachel stood on his porch with a girl who looked simultaneously younger and older than 17. Olivia Bennett was thin, too thin, with long dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a hoodie that hung off her small frame, and she carried a battered backpack that looked like it contained everything she owned. Her eyes, a striking hazel, darted around continuously, never resting on any one thing for too long, especially not on Mason. "Olivia, this is my brother Mason," Rachel said gently. "He's a guidance counselor at Ridgefield High." Olivia nodded almost imperceptibly but didn't speak. "Thank you for doing this," Rachel said to Mason, handing him a folder. "Here's her information. And my direct line. I'll check in tomorrow, but call me any time if you need anything." After Rachel left, Mason stood awkwardly in the entryway with Olivia. "The guest room is this way," he said finally, leading her down the hall. "Bathroom's right next door. There are clean towels if you want to shower." Olivia followed silently, her footsteps so light they barely made a sound on the hardwood floors. "Are you hungry?" Mason asked. "I could make you a sandwich or something." Olivia shook her head slightly. "Well, kitchen's open if you change your mind. Help yourself to anything." Mason paused at the guest room door. "My son Ethan is asleep across the hall. He's 10. He doesn't know you're here yet. I'll talk to him in the morning." Olivia finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long are you stuck with me?" The question caught Mason off guard. I'm not stuck with you. My sister said you needed a place to stay for a few days. It's no problem." Olivia's eyes finally met his, full of skepticism. "Everyone wants something." Mason recognized the look. He'd seen it in the eyes of too many kids who'd been let down by the adults in their lives. "All I want is for you to be safe tonight," he said simply. "Get some rest, and we'll figure things out tomorrow." After a moment, Olivia slipped past him into the room and closed the door. Mason stood there for a moment, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. The next morning, Mason woke early to explain the situation to Ethan before school. His son sat at the kitchen table, pouring entirely too much syrup on his pancakes, and listening with wide eyes. "So she's going to stay in Grandma's old room?" Ethan asked. "Just for a little while," Mason explained. "Miss Olivia needs a safe place to stay until my Aunt Rachel can find her somewhere permanent. Like how we took care of Mr. Whiskers when the Johnsons went to Disney World," Ethan asked, referring to the neighbor's cat they'd looked after the previous summer. Mason smiled despite himself. "Sort of, but Miss Olivia is a person, not a cat, and she's had some hard times, so we need to be extra kind and give her space if she needs it." "Is she nice?" Ethan asked. "I think she will be once she feels safe," Mason said carefully. "Just be yourself, buddy." When Olivia finally emerged from the guest room, her hair was wet from the shower. She'd changed into clean clothes, but they hung off her frame just as loosely as the ones from last night. "Good morning," Mason said. "This is my son, Ethan." Ethan waved with syrupy fingers. "Hi, Miss Olivia. Do you like pancakes? Dad makes the best pancakes in Connecticut." A flicker of surprise crossed Olivia's face at the child's enthusiastic greeting. Hi," she said quietly. "Hungry?" Mason asked, already pulling out another plate. He didn't wait for her to refuse this time, just set a stack of pancakes in front of the empty chair at the table. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia sat down. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing speed, as if suddenly realizing how hungry she was. "I need to get Ethan to school," Mason said. "Then I thought I could take you to the Family Services Center to meet with Rachel about what happens next. Is that okay?" Olivia tensed visibly. "Are they sending me back home?" "No," Mason said firmly. "Absolutely not. Rachel said they're investigating. Your parents, you won't be going back there." Some of the tension left Olivia's shoulders. Okay. After dropping Ethan at school, Mason and Olivia drove to the Family Services Center in uncomfortable silence. Rachel met them at the entrance and led them to a small conference room. "How was your night?" Rachel asked Olivia.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Fine," Olivia mumbled, staring at her hands. Rachel exchanged a glance with Mason. "Well, I've been making some calls this morning. The good news is that the police have enough evidence to charge Dale Thornton. He's made similar arrangements with other families before, but we've never had a victim willing to testify." "I'm not a victim," Olivia said sharply, "and I didn't agree to testify against anyone." "You don't have to decide that right now," Rachel assured her. "What we need to figure out is where you'll stay. I'm still searching for a foster placement, but with your age..." "No one wants to take in a teenager," Olivia finished flatly. "I know how it works." "That's not true," Rachel started, but Olivia cut her off. "Look, I turn 18 in 5 months. Just let me get my GED and find a job. I can take care of myself." Mason, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Where would you live?" Olivia shrugged. "I'll figure it out." "Without finishing high school?" Mason pressed. "That's going to make things a lot harder." "What difference does it make? No one cares if I graduate." "I care," Mason said simply. Olivia looked at him suspiciously. "You don't even know me." "I know you're bright. I can tell by the way you talk. I know you're resilient, or you wouldn't have survived what you've been through. And I know that every kid deserves a chance to finish their education." Rachel was watching her brother with a thoughtful expression. "Mason, can I talk to you outside for a minute?" In the hallway, Rachel turned to him. "I had an idea last night, but I wanted to see how things went first." "What kind of idea?" Mason asked warily. "What if Olivia stayed with you until she graduates? It would only be for the rest of the school year." Mason stared at his sister. "Rachel, I told you last night. A few days. I'm barely keeping my head above water as it is." "I know, and I wouldn't ask if I had other options. But you saw how she is. She's not going to open up in a traditional foster home, and at her age, group homes are the most likely option." Rachel lowered her voice. "She was sold by her own parents, Mason. Sold. Can you imagine what that does to a person's ability to trust?" Mason ran a hand through his hair. "What about her education? She'd need to transfer to Ridgefield High." "I work there. That could be awkward." "Actually, that could be perfect. You could keep an eye on her, make sure she's adjusting." "And what about Ethan? I have to think about how this would affect him. You said it yourself. You help troubled teens. Every day at school. This isn't so different." "It's completely different," Mason argued. "This would be 24/7 in my home, with my son." Rachel put a hand on his arm. "Just think about it, okay? Talk to Olivia, talk to Ethan. If it doesn't feel right, we'll find another solution." Back in the conference room, Olivia was staring out the window, her posture radiating tension. "Olivia," Rachel said, "would you be willing to stay with Mason and Ethan a little longer, just until we can figure out a more permanent arrangement?" Olivia's eyes darted between them. "Why would he want me to stay?" "Because I think you need stability right now," Mason said, surprising himself with the words. "And because I have the space." "What's the catch?" Olivia asked bluntly. "No catch. You'd need to enroll at Ridgefield High. That's where I work. You'd have to follow the house rules just like Ethan does, and maybe help out with some chores." Olivia studied him with those wary hazel eyes. "I can cook," she said finally. "And clean. I'm good at it." "You're not coming to be our housekeeper," Mason clarified quickly. "You'd be more like a guest, but one who helps out sometimes like any family member would." Olivia flinched slightly at the word family. What about Ethan? Does he get a vote? Mason thought about his son's easy acceptance that morning. Ethan's a pretty easygoing kid, but yes, I'll talk to him about it. And what if it doesn't work out? Olivia pressed. What if you decide you don't want me around anymore? The question broke Mason's heart a little. How many times had this girl been discarded? Then we'd talk about it like adults and figure out. The next step's with Rachel, he said firmly. I wouldn't just kick you out. For the first time, something like hope flickered across Olivia's face, so briefly that Mason almost missed it. I guess I could stay for a little while, she said cautiously. That evening, after talking it through with Ethan, who was thrilled at the idea of having what he called a big sister, Mason helped Olivia get settled more permanently. Rachel had brought over some donated clothes and toiletries, and Mason cleared out space in the bathroom cabinet and a dresser in the guest room. We can get some stuff to make the room more yours, he offered. Maybe some posters or something? Olivia looked around at the floral wallpaper and lace curtains that Caroline's mother had chosen years ago. It's fine, she said. I don't need anything. Mason recognized the response of someone used to having things taken away, someone afraid to get attached to possessions. Well, the offer stands if you change your mind, he said. Dinner will be ready in about half an hour. As he turned to leave, Olivia spoke again. Mr. Reynolds? You can call me Mason. Mason, thank you for letting me stay. You're welcome, Olivia. That first week was an awkward dance of establishing boundaries and routines. Mason helped Olivia enroll at Ridgefield. High, careful to place her in classes where he wouldn't be directly overseeing her. Principal Harrington was understanding of the situation after Rachel provided the necessary documentation. The official story was that Olivia was Mason's distant niece who had come to live with them due to family circumstances. Close enough. To the truth, without revealing the painful details. Olivia was quiet at school, keeping to herself and doing her work diligently. At home, she was equally reserved, but Mason noticed she seemed to relax more around Ethan. His son had a gift for disarming people with his innocent chatter and endless questions about everything from dinosaurs to outer space. One evening after Ethan had gone to bed, Mason found Olivia sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of textbooks, her forehead creased in concentration. Homework? He asked, pouring himself a cup of tea. Olivia nodded. Catching up. I missed a lot of school before. Mason sat down across from her. Need any help? I'm okay, she said automatically, but then hesitated. Actually, this chemistry stuff is confusing. Mason smiled. Chemistry was my best subject in college. Let me take a look. As they worked through the problems together, Mason learned bits and pieces about Olivia's past. Her parents' gambling addiction had started when she was 12. By 14, they were pawning household items to pay debts. By 16, they were behind on rent and facing eviction. They always said they'd stop, Olivia said quietly. After the next win, they'd stop and things would go back to normal, but they just kept losing. When Dale Thornton offered to clear their debts in exchange for Olivia coming to work for him, her parents had convinced themselves it was a legitimate opportunity. Or at least, that's what they claimed later. How did you end up on Route 7 that night? Mason asked gently. Olivia's face hardened. I was there for 3 days. He got drunk the third night and made it clear what kind of work he expected. I waited until he passed out and just left. Started walking. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away from there. The first month of Olivia living with the Reynolds family passed faster than anyone expected. As October turned to November, the New England autumn painted Ridgefield in brilliant shades of red and gold. Mason found himself settling into a new routine that now included not just Ethan, but Olivia as well. Despite his initial concerns, Mason discovered that having Olivia in the house actually made some things easier. She was responsible and mature, beyond her years, a product of having to fend for herself for so long. When Mason had to work late for parent-teacher conferences, Olivia helped Ethan with his homework and made sure he didn't spend the entire evening playing video games. 1. Crisp Saturday morning, Mason came downstairs to find Olivia and Ethan in the kitchen surrounded by flour and mixing bowls. "What's going on here?" he asked, amused by the dusting of flour on Ethan's nose. "We're making pancakes," Ethan announced proudly. "Olivia's teaching me her secret recipe." Olivia looked slightly embarrassed. "I hope that's okay. Ethan said he was hungry and you were still sleeping." "It's more than okay," Mason assured her. "I haven't slept past 7 in years." Olivia gave a small smile, something that was happening more frequently now. "My grandmother taught me to make these before she died. It's one of the few good memories I have from growing up." The pancakes were delicious, lighter and fluffier than Mason's standard recipe. As they ate, Ethan chatted animatedly about his upcoming science fair project. "It's about ecosystems. I want to build a mini rainforest in a bottle. Do you think we could go to the craft store today to get supplies?" "Sure, buddy," Mason said. "Olivia, would you like to come along?" A shadow passed over Olivia's face. "Actually, I should probably stay here and catch up on some reading for English class." Mason recognized the excuse for what it was. Olivia still rarely ventured out in public with them, preferring to stay within the safety of the house. The few times they had gone out as a trio, she had kept her distance, walking slightly behind them as if to make it clear she wasn't really part of the family. "The reading will still be there when you get back," Mason said gently. "Some fresh air would do you good?" Olivia hesitated, then shrugged. "Okay, I guess." At the craft store, Ethan raced ahead to the science project aisle while Mason and Olivia followed more slowly. "How's school going?" Mason asked. He was careful not to check up on her too obviously at Ridgefield High, wanting to give her space to establish her own identity there. "Fine," Olivia said, her standard answer to most questions. Then she added, "Actually, Mrs. Winters asked me to join the creative writing club. She said I have talent." Mason knew Diane Winters, the English teacher who ran the club. She was notoriously selective about which students she encouraged to join. "That's great," he said sincerely. "Are you going to do it?" Olivia traced her finger along a shelf edge. "Maybe. It meets after school on Thursdays." "You should definitely go if you're interested. I can pick up Ethan those days. We'll work it out." As they turned down the next aisle, a voice called out, "Mason? Mason Reynolds?" Mason looked up to see Linda Phillips, a science teacher from Ridgefield High, pushing a shopping cart toward them. Her eyes darted curiously between Mason and Olivia. "Linda, hi," Mason said. "Doing some weekend shopping?" "Just picking up supplies. For Monday's lab," Linda said, still looking inquisitively at Olivia. "I don't think we've met." Mason felt Olivia tense beside him. They'd agreed on the cover story of Olivia being his niece, but this was the first time they'd had to use it outside of school administration. "This is Olivia Bennett, my niece," Mason said smoothly. "She's staying with us for the school year. Olivia, this is Mrs. Phillips from the science department." "Nice to meet you," Olivia said quietly, not quite meeting Linda's eyes. Linda smiled warmly. "You as well, dear. I didn't know Mason had a niece. Are you enjoying Ridgefield so far?" Before Olivia could answer, Ethan came bounding back, arms full of plastic containers and packets of seeds. "Dad, I found everything we need for the rainforest." "Oh, hi, Mrs. Phillips." Linda laughed. "Hello, Ethan. Still the enthusiastic scientist, I see. I had Ethan in my 5th grade science enrichment program last year," she explained to Olivia. "He built a solar-powered car that outpaced everyone else's." "It only went like 2 feet," Ethan said modestly, but he was beaming. "Well, I should let you get back to your shopping," Linda said. Olivia, if you ever need anything at school, my classroom is right down the hall from your uncle's office. After Linda moved on, Olivia released a breath she'd been holding. That was weird. What was weird about it? Mason asked as they headed to the checkout. Just pretending to be your niece, having someone believe it. Is that okay? The niece story, I mean. We can come up with something else if it makes you uncomfortable. Olivia shook her head. No, it's fine. It's easier than explaining the truth. After a pause, she added, My real aunt and uncle wouldn't take me in. When social services called them, they said they had their own problems. The raw hurt in her voice was unmistakable. Mason placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Their loss, he said simply. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Mason found Olivia sitting on the back porch despite the autumn chill. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring up at the stars. Room for one more? Mason asked, holding up 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Olivia nodded, shifting to make space on the porch swing. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping their drinks. My mom used to love stars, Olivia said suddenly. Before everything went wrong, she would take me out to look at them. She knew all the constellations. It was the first time Olivia had voluntarily shared anything positive about her parents. Mason recognized the significance. Caroline, my wife, was the same way, Mason said. She bought Ethan his first telescope when he was only 4, said it's never too early to wonder about what's out there. How did she die? Olivia asked softly. Pancreatic cancer. It was quick. Only 6 months from diagnosis to... Mason trailed off, the familiar ache filling his chest. Ethan was 7, old enough to understand what was happening, but too young to really process it. I'm sorry, Olivia said, and Mason could tell she meant it. It's been hard, but we're getting by. Mason looked over at her. What about your dad? Was he always into gambling? Olivia finished. No, he was a construction foreman, worked hard all his life. Then he fell from a scaffold and hurt his back. The doctors prescribed pain pills, and when those ran out, he started betting on sports to feel something, I guess. Mom tried to stop him at first, but then she started joining in. They said they were doing it for me, to give me a better life when they hit the big win. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Have you heard from them? Mason asked carefully. Olivia shook her head. Rachel, Ms. Reynolds, says they're facing criminal charges. They're claiming they didn't know what Dale really wanted, that they thought it was just housekeeping. Her voice turned bitter. They knew. Mason fought to keep his expression neutral, though inside he was furious at the parents who had betrayed their daughter so completely. You deserved better, he said finally. Olivia didn't respond directly, but after a moment she said, I've been thinking about that creative writing club. I think I might try it. Mason recognized the change of subject and respected it. I think that's a great idea. The following Thursday, Olivia attended her first creative writing club meeting, while Mason picked up Ethan from his after-school science program. When Mason returned to Ridgefield High to collect Olivia, he found her engaged in an animated discussion with Mrs. Winters and 2 other students. Olivia looked up when Mason entered the classroom, but instead of immediately grabbing her things to leave, she held up a finger in a 1-minute gesture and finished making her point about character development in the story they were discussing. On the drive home, Olivia was more talkative than Mason had ever seen her. Mrs. Winters said my short story has tremendous emotional resonance, whatever that means, she said, a hint of pride in her voice. She wants me to submit it to this student writing competition in Hartford. That's fantastic, Mason said. What's the story about? Olivia hesitated. It's about a girl who lives in a house with a locked room. Everyone tells her never to go in there, but she can hear someone crying behind the door every night. Sounds intriguing. What's in the room? Olivia gave him a small smile. You'll have to read it to find out. The writing club seemed to unlock something in Olivia. Over the next few weeks, Mason noticed her becoming more engaged, not just with her writing but with school in general. Her grades, which had been decent but not exceptional, began to improve. She still had moments of withdrawal and wariness, but they were becoming less frequent. One day in early December, Mason checked his email during his lunch break to find a message from Olivia's history teacher, Mr. Garcia. Mason, just wanted to let you know that Olivia's presentation on the Great Depression was outstanding. Her analysis of how economic hardship affects family dynamics showed remarkable insight. You should be proud. Carlos. Mason was proud, though he knew he couldn't take credit for Olivia's academic abilities. Still, the fact that she was beginning to shine gave him a warm feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. That afternoon, when Olivia stopped by his office to tell him she'd be staying late for a study group, Mason mentioned the email. Mr. Garcia was impressed with your presentation, he said. Olivia ducked her head, but not before Mason caught the pleased smile on her face. It wasn't a big deal. The topic was interesting. Well, he thought it was exceptional. So do I for what it's worth. Olivia looked up, her expression suddenly serious. Why are you doing all this, Mason? Doing what? Taking me in, helping me with school, acting like you care what happens to me. I'm not acting, Mason said firmly. I do care. But why? We're not related. You didn't even know me 2 months ago. Mason considered his answer carefully. When I was 16, my dad lost his job. We almost lost our house. My basketball coach let me stay with his family when things got really bad at home. He didn't have to do that, but he did. It made all the difference in my life. Mason looked her in the eye. Sometimes people help because they can, and because it's the right thing to do. No ulterior motives. Olivia studied him for a long moment, as if trying to detect any deception. Finally, she nodded. I should get to my study group. I'll pick you up at 5:30, Mason said. As Christmas approached, Mason began to worry about how the holiday might affect Olivia. He knew from his work as a guidance counselor that celebrations could be difficult for kids who were separated from their families, regardless of the circumstances. One evening, as he and Ethan decorated their artificial Christmas tree, Mason noticed Olivia watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. Want to help? He offered. Ethan's in charge of the bottom third, I take the middle, and the top section is unclaimed territory. We never really did Christmas, Olivia said. My parents usually spent the money on lottery tickets. Ethan looked up from arranging a string of lights. Never did Christmas? But what about presents and cookies and stuff? Olivia shrugged. Sometimes my grandmother would get me something small before she died. Ethan looked so distressed by this information that Mason quickly intervened. Well, you're with us now, and we definitely have Christmas. Right, Ethan? Right, Ethan agreed enthusiastically. And we need help with the star. Dad always puts it on crooked. I do not, Mason protested, but he was smiling. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia stepped forward and accepted the box of ornaments Ethan thrust into her hands. Together, the three of them finished decorating the tree, with Ethan providing a running commentary on the history of each ornament. This one Mom made when she was pregnant with me, he explained, holding up a salt dough star with a tiny handprint pressed into it. And this one Dad and I made last year at the community center. Olivia handled each ornament with care, listening to Ethan's stories and asking questions that delighted the boy. When they finished, Mason turned off the main lights, and the three of them stood admiring the twinkling tree. It's beautiful, Olivia said softly. Later that night, after both kids had gone to bed, Mason called Rachel. How's it going? She asked. Any problems with Olivia? Actually, she's doing really well, Mason said. Better than I expected, but I wanted to ask you about something. What's up? Christmas is coming. and I want to get Olivia some gifts, but I'm not sure what would be appropriate. I don't want to make her uncomfortable." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "It's a good sign that you're thinking about this, Mason. It means you see her as part of your family now." "I don't know if I'd go that far," Mason said, though the words didn't sound entirely convincing even to him. "I just don't want her to feel left out when Ethan is opening his presents." "Sure," Rachel said, and Mason could hear the smile in her voice. "Whatever you say. As for gifts, I'd keep it practical but with a few personal touches. Things she needs, but also something that shows you've been paying attention to her interests." After they hung up, Mason realized with some surprise that he did think of Olivia as part of their household now. Not just a temporary guest, but someone who belonged with them. The realization both warmed and worried him. Their arrangement was still technically temporary, though Rachel hadn't mentioned any progress in finding Olivia a permanent placement in weeks. The next day, Mason used his lunch break to shop for Olivia's gifts. He bought her a new winter coat. He'd noticed her current one was threadbare, a set of quality notebooks for her writing, and a necklace with a tiny silver star pendant that reminded him of their conversation on the porch. As he paid for the necklace, he wondered if it was too personal a gift. But then he thought about Olivia's face as she'd looked at the Christmas tree lights, and he knew he wanted her to have something beautiful that was just hers. The week before Christmas break, Olivia came home from school with unexpected news. "Mrs. Winters submitted my story to that competition I told you about," she announced as she dropped her backpack on the kitchen counter. "I'm a finalist." "Olivia, that's incredible," Mason exclaimed. "When will you find out if you won?" "There's a ceremony in Hartford on January 15th. All the finalists have to attend and read part of their work." Ethan, who was working on a puzzle at the table, looked up. "Can we go watch? I want to hear your story." Olivia glanced at Mason, uncertainty. "It's on a Saturday afternoon. I know it's kind of far." "Are you kidding?" "Of course we'll be there," Mason assured her. "We wouldn't miss it." The smile that lit up Olivia's face made something in Mason's chest tighten. When was the last time someone had shown up to support this girl? "There's just one thing," Olivia said, her smile fading slightly. "They sent home this permission form. It needs to be signed by a parent or guardian." She handed Mason a wrinkled paper she'd pulled from her pocket. He looked at it, understanding the dilemma. He wasn't legally her parent or guardian. Rachel was her caseworker, and technically the state had custody of Olivia. "I'll talk to Rachel," he promised. "We'll figure it out." Rachel, as it turned out, had a solution. "I can sign it as her state-appointed representative," she told Mason over the phone. "But," she paused, "have you thought about making this arrangement more permanent?" "What do you mean?" Mason asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "I mean becoming Olivia's legal guardian. She turns 18 in May, but having an official guardian until then would give her more stability. She could stay with you through graduation, maybe even apply to colleges with your address as her permanent residence." Mason sat down heavily in his desk chair. "That's a big step, Rachel." "I know. But you three seem to be doing well together. And finding another placement at this point would be disruptive for everyone, especially Olivia. What about her parents? Would they need to agree? Given the criminal charges they're facing, termination of parental rights is almost certain. They wouldn't have much ground to object." "I need to think about this," Mason said, "and talk to Ethan and Olivia." "Of course," Rachel said, "but don't wait too long. These things take time to process." That night, after Ethan was asleep, Mason found Olivia at the kitchen table working on homework. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked. Olivia set down her pencil, her expression immediately guarded. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Mason assured her quickly. "I talked to Rachel about the permission form. She can sign it." Relief washed over Olivia's face. "Oh, that's good." but it got me thinking about your situation more broadly. Mason took a deep breath. How would you feel about making our arrangement more official? Me becoming your legal guardian until you turn 18? Olivia stared at him, her expression unreadable. Why would you want to do that? Because you're doing well here. You're thriving at school. You and Ethan get along, and Mason hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. And because I care about what happens to you, Olivia. Not just now, but in the future too. Olivia looked down at her hands. What if you change your mind? I won't, Mason said simply. You can't promise that. What if I mess up? What if I'm in too much trouble? Olivia, look at me, Mason said gently. When she did, he continued. Everyone messes up sometimes. That doesn't mean they get thrown away. That's not how family works. Olivia's eyes widened slightly at the word family. Is that what this would be? It already is, in all the ways that matter, Mason said, surprising himself with how true the words felt. The guardianship would just make it official on paper. What, about Ethan? Would he be okay with it? Mason smiled. Ethan adores you. He's already telling his friends about his big sister. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, and Mason could almost see the battle taking place behind her eyes. Hope warring with the fear of disappointment, the instinct to protect herself from potential rejection. Finally, she took a deep breath. Okay, she said quietly. If you're sure. I'm sure, Mason said firmly. For the first time since he'd known her, Olivia initiated physical contact, leaning forward to give him a quick, awkward hug. Thank you, she whispered. Later that night, as Mason lay in bed reflecting on their conversation, he realized something with perfect clarity. Taking in Olivia hadn't been the burden he'd initially feared. Instead, she was bringing a balance to their little family that had been missing since Caroline died. She wasn't a replacement for his wife, of course. Nothing could ever be that. But her presence had brought new energy into a home that had been merely surviving for too long. And though he couldn't have predicted it that night when Rachel first called, Olivia Bennett was turning out to be an unexpected blessing for the Reynolds family. Christmas morning in the Reynolds household was filled with a joy that Mason hadn't anticipated. He woke early to start breakfast, only to find Olivia already in the kitchen mixing pancake batter, her special recipe that had become Ethan's favorite. Couldn't sleep? Mason asked, reaching for the coffee maker. Olivia shrugged. First real Christmas in a long time. Guess I was excited. The simple admission warmed Mason's heart. Ethan came thundering down the stairs moments later, still in his dinosaur pajamas, his eyes wide with excitement. Is it time for presents? He asked breathlessly. Breakfast first, Mason reminded him. Then presents. Ethan groaned dramatically, but brightened when he saw Olivia's pancakes cooking on the griddle. With chocolate chips? Half with, half without, Olivia confirmed. Some of us prefer blueberries. She glanced at Mason with a small smile, having noticed his preference weeks ago. After breakfast, they gathered around the tree. Mason had always maintained the tradition of taking turns opening gifts one at a time, a practice Caroline had insisted on to make Christmas morning last longer. Ethan went first, tearing into a package containing the latest Space Explorers Lego set he'd been coveting. Your turn, Olivia, Mason prompted, handing her a neatly wrapped package. Olivia accepted it with a look of surprise, as if she hadn't quite believed there would really be presents for her. She unwrapped it carefully, preserving the paper in a way that spoke volumes about her past. Inside was the winter coat Mason had chosen, navy blue with a soft fleece lining. I noticed your old one was pretty thin, Mason explained. Connecticut winters aren't messing around. It's perfect, Olivia said softly, running her hand over the material. Thank you. They continued taking turns, with Ethan's enthusiasm growing with each gift. When Olivia opened the set of notebooks, her eyes lit up. "These are the ones Mrs. Winters uses," she said. "How did you know?" I might have asked her which brand's serious. "Writers prefer," Mason admitted. The last gift for Olivia was the small jewelry box containing the star necklace. When she opened it, she went very still. "It reminded me of our conversation on the porch," Mason explained. "About the stars." Olivia lifted the delicate silver pendant, her eyes suspiciously bright. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Here, I'll help you put it on," Ethan offered, taking the necklace and fumbling with the clasp until Mason gently took over. Once all the presents had been opened, Olivia disappeared into her room briefly. She returned with 2 hastily wrapped packages. "I didn't have much money," she said hesitantly, "but I wanted to get you both something." Ethan's gift was a handmade comic book featuring Captain Ethan, a space explorer who saved planets with his scientific knowledge. Olivia had drawn and colored every page herself. "This is the coolest thing ever," Ethan exclaimed immediately, immersed in reading his personalized adventure. Mason's gift was a framed piece of handwritten poetry, Olivia's own work, he realized as he read it. The poem was titled "Second Chances" and spoke of finding light after darkness, of trust slowly rebuilt. The elegant handwriting and thoughtful words moved him deeply. "This is incredible, Olivia," he said sincerely. "I'll treasure it." They spent the rest of the day in comfortable companionship, watching Christmas movies and enjoying a simple dinner. Mason caught Olivia touching her star necklace throughout the day, as if reassuring herself it was still there. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Mason found Olivia on the back porch again, wrapped in her new coat despite being just steps from the door. "Testing it out?" he asked, joining her on the swing. "It's so warm," she said, sounding almost amazed. "I can't remember the last time I wasn't cold in winter." The statement, delivered so matter-of-factly, pierced Mason's heart. How many basic comforts had this girl gone without? "I have something else for you," Mason said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "It's not exactly a Christmas gift, more of an update." Olivia opened the envelope to find paperwork from Family Services. "Petition for legal guardianship," she read aloud. "Rachel helped fast-track it," Mason explained. "There's a court date set for January 10th. If all goes well, I'll officially be your guardian until you turn 18. And beyond that, well, this will always be your home if you want it to be." Olivia studied the papers, her expression unreadable in the dim porch light. "What happens at the court date?" "We both go before a judge who reviews the petition. Your parents will be notified, but given their current legal situation, Rachel doesn't expect them to contest it." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "Will I have to see them? My parents?" "No," Mason assured her. "Rachel made sure of that. You won't have to see them or speak to them." "Good," Olivia said firmly. Then, more softly, "This is really happening, isn't it?" "Only if you want it to," Mason reminded her. "This is your choice, Olivia." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes reflecting the glow from the Christmas lights visible through the window. "I want it," she said simply. The new year brought fresh challenges. School resumed, and with it came the everyday stresses of teenage life. Olivia had gradually made a few friends at Ridgefield High, particularly in the creative writing club, but she still kept most people at arm's length. Mason was careful not to hover, but he kept an eye on how she was adjusting. One day, he overheard 2 students talking outside his office. "Did you know that Bennett girl is Reynolds' niece? Rumor is her parents are in jail or something. I heard she was in foster care before. Jessica's mom works at the courthouse and said there's some guardianship thing going on." Mason stepped into view, and the students quickly dispersed. He made a mental note to check in with Olivia, concerned about how she was handling the inevitable high school gossip. That evening, he broached the subject gently. "Everything okay at school?" any issues with other students? Olivia looked up from her homework with a knowing expression. You mean, am I bothered by people talking about me? Not really. I've dealt with worse than gossip. If anyone gives you a hard time. Mason, Olivia interrupted with a hint of amusement. I'm fine. Actually, some of the kids think it's cool that I have this mysterious backstory. Tyler Newman even asked me to the winter formal. He what? Mason wasn't prepared for this development. Who's Tyler Newman? Relax, Olivia laughed, a genuine laugh that Mason still wasn't used to hearing. He's in my English class. Very respectful. Good grades. No criminal record that I'm aware of. Very funny, Mason grumbled. Did you say yes? I told him I'd think about it. Olivia tilted her head. Would that be okay? Mason realized he was experiencing a parental emotion he hadn't expected to feel for Olivia, protective concern about dating. Of course it's okay. If you want to go, you should go. Just, be careful, Olivia suggested, amusement still dancing in her eyes. Don't worry, I'm not exactly trusting by nature. Mason sighed. I just want you to be able to be a normal teenager, with normal teenage experiences. Olivia's expression softened. I know, and I'm trying. It's just a lot sometimes. The court date for the guardianship hearing arrived quickly. Mason took the day off work, and Rachel met them at the courthouse. Olivia was unnaturally quiet that morning, picking at her breakfast and jumping at small noises. Nervous? Mason asked as they drove downtown. What if the judge says no? Olivia blurted out. What if my parents show up and convince them I should go back home? That's not going to happen, Mason assured her. Rachel has all the documentation about their case. No judge would send you back there. But what if something else goes wrong? What if they find some reason you can't be my guardian? Mason reached over and squeezed her hand. Then we'll figure it out together. I'm not giving up, Olivia. No matter what happens today. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and echoing hallways. Rachel met them at the entrance. Professional, in her charcoal suit but with a warm smile for Olivia. Everything's in order, she told them. Judge Harrington is fair and reasonable. I've worked with her before on similar cases. They waited on a hard wooden bench outside the courtroom, Mason signing the occasional form Rachel produced. Olivia sat rigidly beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When they were finally called in, the proceedings were surprisingly brief. Judge Harrington, a stern-looking woman with silver hair, reviewed the petition and asked a few direct questions. Ms. Bennett, she addressed Olivia, you're nearly 18. In just a few months, you'll legally be an adult. Why is this guardianship important to you now? Olivia stood straighter. Because I want to finish high school without worrying about where I'll live, or if I'll have to move again. Because, she glanced at Mason. Because for the first time in years, I feel safe and supported. The judge nodded, making a note. Mr. Reynolds, you understand the responsibilities you're taking on? Financial support, educational oversight, medical care? I do, Your Honor, Mason said firmly. Olivia has become part of our family. My son and I want her to stay with us. Judge, Harrington reviewed the documentation one more time, including the reports about Olivia's parents. Given the circumstances and the wishes of all parties involved, I'm approving this petition. Mr. Reynolds, you are hereby appointed legal guardian of Olivia Bennett until she reaches the age of majority. The gavel struck, and just like that, it was official. Olivia let out a shaky breath beside him. Outside the courtroom, Rachel hugged them both. Congratulations, she said. I knew this would work out. Thank you for everything, Rachel, Mason said sincerely. We couldn't have done this without you. Are you kidding? This is why I do this job. Rachel smiled at Olivia. For outcomes like this. That evening, they celebrated with pizza and ice cream, Ethan's suggestion. The 10-year-old was thrilled by the news, though he didn't fully understand the legal implications. "So now you're really staying forever?" he asked Olivia between bites of pepperoni pizza. "Well, at least until I go to college," Olivia said, then glanced uncertainly at Mason. "If I go to college." "When you go to college," Mason corrected gently. "Have you started thinking about where you might want to apply?" Olivia hesitated. "Mrs. Winters thinks I should consider some schools with strong creative writing programs. UConn has a good one, and it's not too far away." "That sounds perfect," Mason said. "We should start looking into scholarship opportunities, too." "Wouldn't... I mean, isn't college expensive?" Olivia asked awkwardly. "We'll figure it out," Mason assured her. "There are scholarships, grants, work-study programs, and I've been putting a little aside for Ethan's education since he was born." "We can make it work." Olivia looked down at her plate. "You don't have to do that. You've already done so much." "That's what family does," Mason said simply. "And like it or not, you're stuck with us now. Right, Ethan?" "Right," Ethan agreed enthusiastically. "Plus, if you go to UConn, you can come home on weekends and help me with my science projects. I'm going to build a robot next year." Olivia laughed, the tension leaving her shoulders. "It's a deal." The next milestone was the writing competition in Hartford. They drove there on a snowy January morning, with Ethan bouncing excitedly in the backseat and Olivia nervously reviewing her reading selection. "What if I freeze up?" she asked, flipping through her note cards for the dozenth time. "Then you take a deep breath and start again," Mason advised. "But you won't freeze up. You know this story inside and out." The competition was held in an auditorium at Hartford Public Library. Families and friends filled the seats, while the student finalists gathered in a room backstage. Mason and Ethan found seats near the front, with Ethan clutching the program proudly. "It says Olivia's name right here," he pointed out to Mason. "Olivia Bennett, Ridgefield High School, the locked room." "That's right," Mason said, feeling a surge of pride. "That's our Olivia." The finalists were called up one by one to read excerpts from their work. When Olivia's turn came, she walked to the podium with her head high, though Mason could see the slight tremor in her hands. "The locked room is about the things we hide from others and from ourselves," she began. "About the doors we're afraid to open and what happens when we finally find the courage to turn the key." As she read, her voice grew stronger. The story was beautifully crafted, weaving together elements of fairy tale and psychological drama. The audience was captivated, including Ethan, who sat utterly still for perhaps the first time in his life. When Olivia finished reading, the applause was enthusiastic. She returned to her seat with pink cheeks, catching Mason's eye briefly. He gave her a thumbs up and she smiled, a real, uninhibited smile that transformed her face. After all the finalists had presented, the judges retired to deliberate. During the break, Mason and Ethan found Olivia in the lobby. "That was awesome," Ethan exclaimed. "The part about the mirror that shows the future was so cool." "You were incredible," Mason agreed. "No matter what the judges decide, you should be very proud." "Thanks," Olivia said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I can't believe I actually did it. I was so nervous I thought I might pass out." "You couldn't tell at all," Mason assured her. "You looked like a professional up there." When the winners were announced, Olivia didn't take first place. That went to a senior from a private school in West Hartford. But she was awarded second place and a $500 scholarship prize. "Not bad for my first competition," she said as they drove home, the certificate and check safely tucked in her bag. "Not bad at all," Mason agreed. "In fact, it's exceptional." "Second place out of how many entries?" "Over 200, Mrs. Winters said. "See? Exceptional." Olivia gazed out the window at the passing landscape, her expression thoughtful. I never would have entered if she hadn't pushed me. If I hadn't been at Ridgefield High. She looked at Mason. If you hadn't taken me in that night. It was all you, Olivia, Mason said sincerely. You had this talent all along. You just needed the right circumstances to let it shine. As winter melted into spring, the household settled into comfortable routines. Olivia did end up going to the winter formal with Tyler Newman, a polite boy who came to the door with flowers, and endured Mason's attempt at an intimidating father figure with good humor. She came home before curfew, her eyes bright with the simple joy of a normal teenage experience. College applications went out, with Mrs. Winters helping Olivia polish her personal essays. The story of her past was transformed in her writing, not hidden or glossed over, but reframed as a journey that had made her stronger, more empathetic, more determined. One evening in April, Mason came home to find Olivia dancing around the kitchen with Ethan, waving an envelope. "What's going on?" asked, setting down his briefcase. "She got in," Ethan announced, "to the college with the special writing program." "UConn?" Mason asked, his heart leaping. "With a merit scholarship," Olivia confirmed, her face radiant with joy. "It doesn't cover everything, but with the financial aid package." "It's doable," Mason finished, pulling her into a hug. "Olivia, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." "There's more," she said when he released her. "Mrs. Winters submitted my portfolio to this summer writing workshop at Wesleyan. They only take 20 students each year, and—" She held up another letter. "I got in, full scholarship." "That's our Olivia," Ethan said proudly. "The best writer in Connecticut." "I wouldn't go that far," Olivia laughed, ruffling his hair. "But it's pretty cool, right?" As Mason watched them, Ethan's uninhibited excitement, Olivia's hard-earned joy, he felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. This unlikely family they'd created wasn't what he'd planned or expected, but it had become something beautiful, healing all of them in different ways. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Mason found Olivia sitting at the kitchen table with her acceptance letters spread before her. "I never thought this would happen for me," she said quietly. "College, a future, a real chance." "You earned every bit of it," Mason told her, "through talent and hard work." "But I wouldn't have had the opportunity without you," Olivia insisted. "When you took me in that night," she touched the star necklace she still wore every day. "You changed everything, Mason." "It goes both ways, you know," Mason said, sitting down across from her. "Having you here has changed things for Ethan and me, too. Before you came, we were just surviving, going through the motions. You brought something back to this house that had been missing." Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for all this to disappear." "It won't," Mason promised. "Your past doesn't define your future, Olivia. What happened with your parents, with Dale Thornton? That's not who you are, or what you deserve." "I know that now," Olivia said, "but sometimes I still can't believe how differently things turned out. If Rachel hadn't called you that night, if you hadn't answered the phone—" "But I did," Mason said simply. "And here we are." As they sat together in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the tangible proof of Olivia's bright future, Mason reflected on the strange winding path that had brought them to this moment. When he'd answered that late-night call from Rachel all those months ago, he'd had no idea he was about to welcome someone who would bring so much light back into their lives. The girl who had been essentially sold by her own parents had become his family's unexpected blessing. And perhaps, in some small way, he and Ethan had been a blessing to her as well. May arrived with a burst of green across Ridgefield, bringing with it Olivia's 18th birthday. Though she had initially insisted she didn't want to make a fuss, Ethan had other ideas. "We have to have a party," he declared at breakfast 3 days before her birthday. "With balloons and a cake and everything?" "Ethan, really? It's not necessary," Olivia protested, though Mason detected a hint of pleasure in her expression. "When was the last time you had a real birthday celebration?" Mason asked gently. Olivia considered this. "My grandmother used to make cupcakes when I was little, but after she died," she shrugged. "My parents usually forgot." Ethan looked horrified. "Forgot your birthday? That's the worst thing ever." "Then it's settled," Mason said. "Nothing huge, but definitely cake. And maybe a few friends from school." In the end, Olivia agreed to a small gathering. Mrs. Winters came, along with 4 students from the Creative Writing Club, including Tyler Newman. Rachel brought her husband and their daughter, who was close to Ethan's age. Even Principal Harrington stopped by briefly with a gift card to a local bookstore. They set up tables in the backyard, strung lights in the trees, and filled a cooler with sodas and ice. Mason grilled burgers and hot dogs while Ethan proudly showed Rachel's daughter his latest science project. When it came time for cake, Mason brought out the chocolate layer cake he'd special ordered from the bakery downtown. 18 candles flickered in the early evening light as everyone sang, "Happy Birthday." "Make a wish," Ethan urged as Olivia prepared to blow out the candles. Olivia paused, looking around at the smiling faces, at the modest home that had become her haven, at the family she'd found in the most unexpected circumstances. "I think my wishes already came true," she said softly, then blew out all 18 candles in one breath. Later, after the guests had gone and Ethan had been tucked into bed, Olivia helped Mason clean up the kitchen. "Thank you for today," she said, wrapping leftover cake in foil. It was perfect. "You're welcome," Mason said. "But I have one more thing for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "Happy birthday, Olivia." Inside was a key on a simple keychain with the letter O. "You already have a house key," Mason explained. "But this one's different. This is your permanent key. No matter where you go, college, travels, whatever life brings, this is your key to come home. This will always be your home." Olivia stared at the key in her palm, then looked up at Mason with shining eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Mason smiled. "Just know that you always have a place here." Olivia's high school graduation took place on a sweltering day in June. The ceremony was held on the football field, with proud families filling the bleachers. Mason and Ethan arrived early to get good seats, Ethan clutching a bouquet of yellow, roses they'd picked up that morning. "Do you see her?" Ethan asked, standing on his seat to peer at the rows of students in blue caps and gowns. "There," Mason pointed. "Third row, about halfway down." As if sensing their gaze, Olivia turned and spotted them. She gave a small wave, her face breaking into a smile. The change in her since that first night was remarkable, not just physically, though she'd gained healthy weight and her eyes had lost their haunted look, but in her entire demeanor. The wary, defensive girl had blossomed into a confident young woman. The ceremony proceeded with the usual speeches about future potential and new beginnings. When Olivia's name was called, Mason and Ethan cheered loudly enough to make the people around them smile. Olivia crossed the stage with her head high, accepting her diploma with a firm handshake. At the end of the ceremony, they found her amidst the crowd of celebrating graduates. "You did it," Ethan exclaimed, thrusting the roses toward her. "Thanks, buddy," Olivia laughed, accepting the flowers. "These are beautiful." "Congratulations," Mason said, giving her a quick hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Both of you." "Miss Bennett," Mrs. Winters approached, beaming. "Congratulations, and may I just say it's been a privilege to have you in my class." "Thank you for everything," Olivia said sincerely, "especially for believing in my writing." "Oh, that was easy," Mrs. Winters assured her. "Talent like yours is rare. I expect to see your name on a book cover someday." She turned to Mason. You must be very proud of your niece, Mr. Reynolds. Mason and Olivia exchanged a glance. Over the months, the niece cover story had become less necessary as people had simply accepted Olivia as part of the Reynolds family. Few people knew the full truth of her background, and that was how Olivia preferred it. Extremely proud, Mason agreed, of everything she's accomplished. Later that evening, they celebrated with a special dinner at Olivia's favorite restaurant in town. As they waited for their dessert, Mason raised his water glass. "A toast," he said. "To Olivia Bennett, high school graduate, future Yukon freshman, and one of the strongest people I've ever known." "To Olivia," Ethan echoed, clinking his glass enthusiastically against hers. "And to family," Olivia added softly. "To finding it in unexpected places." As summer unfolded, Olivia prepared for her writing workshop at Wesleyan University. The program was residential, which meant she would be living on campus for 6 weeks, her first extended time away from the Reynolds home since she'd arrived. The night before she was set to leave, Mason found her in the guest room. Her room, now decorated gradually over the months with posters, photographs, and books, staring at her packed suitcase. "All ready?" he asked from the doorway. "I think so," Olivia said, though she looked uncertain. "It's weird. I used to dream about getting away, having my own place. Now I'm nervous about being gone for 6 weeks." "That's normal," Mason assured her. "But you're going to have an amazing time, and we're only an hour away if you need anything. I know." Olivia sat on the edge of her bed. "I just keep thinking about how much has changed in less than a year. Last summer, I was living with my parents, watching them gamble away our rent money, feeling trapped. Now I'm heading to a prestigious writing workshop, then college in the fall. Sometimes it doesn't feel real. But it is real," Mason said, sitting beside her. "You earned this, Olivia, through hard work and perseverance." "With a lot of help," she added, bumping her shoulder against his. "I'm really going to miss you guys." "We'll miss you too. Ethan's already planning all the things he wants to tell you when you come home on weekends." The Wesleyan workshop proved to be transformative for Olivia's writing. Each weekend when she came home, she brought new stories, new techniques, and a growing confidence in her voice as a writer. Mason watched with pride as she flourished in this environment of fellow creative minds. One Sunday evening, as Olivia prepared to return to Wesleyan for her final week, she showed Mason her latest project, a longer piece she had been developing throughout the program. "It's called Safe Harbor," she explained, somewhat hesitantly. "It's fiction, but inspired by certain experiences." Mason read the pages she offered him, immediately recognizing the parallels to her own journey. The protagonist was a teenage girl who finds refuge with a lighthouse keeper and his young son after escaping a difficult home situation. Though the setting and circumstances were different, the emotional core of the story, finding family in unexpected places, resonated deeply. "This is beautiful, Olivia," Mason said when he finished reading. "Truly. Your best work yet." "My instructor thinks I should develop it into a novel," Olivia said, her voice a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "She says it has commercial potential, whatever that means." "I think she's right," Mason told her. "This story will speak to a lot of people." "Would you be okay with that?" Olivia asked carefully. "I mean, I've changed a lot of details, but someone who knows us might still recognize certain elements." "Olivia," Mason said gently, "your story is yours to tell, however you choose to tell it. If writing this helps you process everything you've been through and might help others in similar situations, I'm all for it." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. That means a lot." As August drew to a close, preparation for college began in earnest. Mason helped Olivia navigate the complexities of financial aid paperwork, housing assignments, and course registration. Together they shopped for dorm essentials, extra-long twin sheets, a desk lamp, a small refrigerator to share with her assigned roommate. Did you talk to her yet? Mason asked as they loaded shopping bags into the car. Your roommate? We've been texting, Olivia said. Her name's Madison. She's from Hartford studying psychology. She seems nice. Just remember, if it doesn't work out with your roommate, there are always ways to make changes. Don't suffer in silence, Olivia laughed. I think I can handle a potentially incompatible roommate, Mason, after everything else. I know, Mason sighed. I'm hovering. A little, Olivia admitted. But it's nice. Move-in day at UConn brought a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. As they unloaded the car and carried Olivia's belongings to her dorm room, Mason found himself thinking of Caroline. How proud she would have been of the teen girl who had become part of their family. How she would have loved Olivia's quiet strength and creative spirit. Madison and her parents were already there when they arrived, arranging furniture on one side of the small room. Introductions were made, and the two girls immediately fell into a discussion about how to organize their shared space. Ethan, momentarily forgotten in the flurry of activity, tugged at Mason's sleeve. Dad? Is Olivia really going to live here? Now? It's so small. This is just during the school year, Mason explained. She'll still come home for breaks and holidays. And weekends sometimes, Olivia added, overhearing them, especially when someone has a science fair coming up. She winked at Ethan, who brightened considerably. After helping arrange furniture and unpack boxes, the moment came for goodbyes. Madison tactfully suggested that she and her parents go check out the dining hall, giving the Reynolds family some privacy. So, Mason said, looking around the now organized dorm room. All set. I think so, Olivia agreed, though she looked less certain than her words suggested. Ethan launched himself at her for a hug. I'm going to miss you so much, but I'll write you letters. Dad said I could. I'd like that, Olivia said, hugging him tightly. And maybe I could call sometimes before bedtime? To hear about your day? Every night, Ethan asked hopefully. Maybe not every night, Mason interjected with a smile. But often. When it was Mason's turn to say goodbye, he found himself unexpectedly emotional. You have everything you need? Your medication? Your emergency contact card? Yes to all of it, Olivia assured him. I'm going to be fine, Mason. Really. I know you will. Mason pulled her into a hug. I'm just going to miss having you around. I'll be home soon, Olivia promised. It's only a few weeks until family weekend. As they finally turned to leave, Ethan dashing ahead to push the elevator button, Olivia called after them. Mason? He turned back. Yes? Thank you, she said simply. For everything. The first few weeks of Olivia being away at college required adjustment for everyone. Ethan moped around the house, claiming things were too quiet without his honorary big sister. Mason found himself automatically setting 3 places at dinner before catching himself. But gradually, a new routine emerged. Olivia called several times a week, sharing stories about her classes, her roommate, the writing group she'd joined. She came home one weekend in late September, her arms full of laundry and her head full of ideas for her developing novel. My creative writing professor wants to introduce me to her agent when the manuscript is ready, she told Mason excitedly. She thinks the story has potential. That's incredible, Mason said sincerely. Just don't let it distract you from your other classes. Olivia rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Yes, Dad, she teased, then froze, looking mortified. I mean, I didn't. It's okay, Mason said gently, touched rather than offended by the slip. I consider it an honor. As fall deepened into winter, the pattern of Olivia's visits home became a comfortable rhythm in their lives. Sometimes she brought friends from college for dinner. Other times she came alone, craving the quiet sanctuary of the house that had become her true home. During her winter break, she and Mason had a long talk about her future. Her first semester grades had been excellent, and she was thriving in her creative writing program. I've been thinking, she said one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, working on a jigsaw puzzle while Ethan slept upstairs. About my name. What? About it? Mason asked, fitting a piece into place. I've been thinking I might want to change it. Legally, I mean. Olivia kept her eyes on the puzzle. Bennett was my father's name. After everything, I don't want to carry it anymore. Mason nodded, understanding completely. That makes sense. Do you have something else in mind? I was thinking. Olivia finally looked up, meeting his gaze. I was thinking maybe Reynolds, if that would be okay with you. The simple request took Mason's breath away. Olivia, nothing would make me prouder. But are you sure? This is a big decision. I've never been more sure of anything, Olivia said, firmly. You and Ethan are my family, my real family. The paperwork would just be making official what's already true in my heart. Mason had to swallow hard before he could respond. Then we'll make it happen. Olivia Reynolds has a nice ring to it. The legal process to change her name took several months, but by the spring of Olivia's freshman year, it was official. She celebrated by ordering new monogrammed stationery for her increasingly frequent letters to literary magazines. As Olivia's first year of college drew to a close, Mason reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. The frightened, defensive girl who had arrived on his doorstep that autumn night had transformed into a confident, thriving young woman with a bright future ahead of her. And in helping her find her way, Mason had rediscovered parts of himself that had been dormant since Caroline's death. His capacity for parental love that extended beyond biological ties, his ability to build a family through choice rather than just circumstance. One evening in early May, almost exactly a year after, Olivia's high school graduation, she called with exciting news. The literary journal at UConn is publishing my short story, the one about the lighthouse keeper. That's fantastic, Mason exclaimed. Your first publication. And that's not all, Olivia continued, her voice bubbling with excitement. Remember that professor who wanted to show my novel to her agent? She did, and the agent wants to read the full manuscript when it's ready. Olivia, that's incredible, Mason said, his heart swelling with pride. You're on your way. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Olivia said, her voice growing serious. You know that, right? If you hadn't answered that call from Rachel that night. But I did, Mason reminded her gently. And look at everything that's come from it. After they hung up, Mason sat on the porch swing, thinking about the strange, winding paths that life sometimes took. If someone had told him 2 years ago that answering a late-night call from his sister would lead to expanding his family and helping a talented young woman find her way, he would never have believed it. The single dad who had once been barely keeping his head above water after his wife's death had found new purpose and joy through reaching out to help someone else. And the girl who had been sold by her own parents had found a true home and the support she needed to pursue her dreams. What had begun as a temporary arrangement, a few days of emergency housing for a teen in crisis, had blossomed into something permanent and profound. In Olivia, Mason and Ethan had found the missing piece that made their house feel like a home again. And in the Reynolds family, Olivia had found the safety, stability, and love she'd been denied for too long. As Mason watched the sunset paint the Ridgefield sky in shades of amber and rose, he thought about the mysterious ways that blessings sometimes entered people's lives, often through doors opened by difficulty or adversity. Sometimes the very circumstances that seemed most challenging turned out to be pathways to unexpected gifts. The girl who had arrived with nothing but a battered backpack and a lifetime of broken trust had indeed turned out to be the blessing none of them had seen coming. And in opening his home to her, Mason had received an equally precious gift, the chance to build a family bound not by blood, but by something even stronger: choice, commitment, and love that had been tested and proven through adversity. Their story wasn't one of perfection or fairy tale endings. There had been struggles, adjustments, and difficult conversations. There would undoubtedly be more challenges ahead. But they would face them together, as a family, one forged in unlikely circumstances, but made unbreakable by the bonds they had chosen to create with each other. And in the end, Mason reflected, that was the greatest blessing of all. 3 years passed in a blur of growth and change for the Reynolds family. Olivia thrived at UConn, maintaining her scholarship with excellent grades while steadily working on her novel. Ethan entered middle school, developing a passion for robotics that kept Mason busy driving him to competitions across the state, and Mason himself found renewed purpose in his role as guidance counselor, inspired by Olivia's journey to advocate more strongly for students facing difficult home situations. The spring of Olivia's junior year brought a momentous announcement. She called one evening, her voice trembling with excitement. "Mason? Is Ethan there too? Can you put me on speaker?" Mason called Ethan down from his room, where he'd been working on his latest robot design. At 13, he was growing lanky, his features starting to mature, though his enthusiasm remained as boundless as ever. "What's up, Liv?" Ethan asked as Mason set the phone on the table between them. "I have news," Olivia said, her voice crackling slightly over the speaker. "Big news." "Don't keep us in suspense," Mason urged, hearing the barely contained excitement. In her tone, "My agent just called. We have an offer for my book, a real publishing contract with Riverside Press." The kitchen exploded with whoops and cheers. "Are you serious?" Mason exclaimed. "That's incredible." "That's the coolest thing ever," Ethan shouted. "My sister's going to be a famous author." "I wouldn't go that far," Olivia laughed, though the pride in her voice was unmistakable. "But yes, they're going to publish Safe Harbor next fall. There's an advance and everything. It's not huge, but it's real." "We need to celebrate," Mason declared. "When are you coming home next?" "Actually, I was thinking of coming this weekend. If that's okay? I want to share all the details in person." "Of course it's okay," Mason said warmly. "This is your home. You never need to ask." That weekend, they celebrated with a special dinner. Mason invited Rachel and her family to join them, along with Mrs. Winters, who had remained a devoted mentor to Olivia throughout her college years. "I always knew you had something special," Mrs. Winters said, raising her glass in a toast. "From that very first story you submitted in my class, I could see your talent. I couldn't have done it without your encouragement," Olivia replied sincerely. "Or without my family." She glanced around the table, her eyes lingering on Mason and Ethan. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." "Tell us about the book," Rachel's daughter Zoe urged. Now 15, she had become close with Olivia. Over the years, looking up to her as a cool, older cousin. "Well," Olivia began, "it's about a teenage girl named Mia who escapes from a difficult situation and finds refuge with a lighthouse keeper named Jack and his son Leo. It's about found family, healing from trauma, and finding your voice." "When does it come out?" Ethan asked eagerly. "Will you do book signings? Can I come?" Olivia laughed. "Not until next fall. There's still a lot of editing to do. But yes, there will probably be some local events, and I absolutely want you there." After everyone had gone home and Ethan had reluctantly gone to bed, Olivia and Mason sat on the back porch, still their favorite spot for serious conversations. "I need to show you something," Olivia said, pulling a manila envelope from her bag. "It's the dedication page for the book. I wanted to make sure you were okay with it before I submit the final draft." Mason opened the envelope and read the single page inside. "For Mason and Ethan, who showed me that family is not always about blood, but about who stays when everyone else walks away. You are my safe harbor. And for Rachel, who made that fateful phone call." Mason had to blink back tears as he read the words. "It's perfect," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm so incredibly proud of you, Olivia." I wanted to make sure I got it right, she said softly. Because without you and Ethan, I don't know where I'd be now, but it wouldn't be here, about to publish my first novel at 21. You're the one who did the hard work, Mason reminded her. All we did was provide a stable home. It was so much more than that, Olivia insisted. You gave me something I'd never had before, unconditional support. You showed me what healthy family love looks like. That changed everything for me. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin to appear in the darkening yard, Mason reflected on how far they'd all come. The scared, defensive teenager he'd reluctantly taken in had blossomed into a confident, talented young woman on the verge of achieving her dreams. And his own life, which had seemed so overwhelmed and incomplete after Caroline's death, had expanded in ways he never could have imagined. The following autumn brought another milestone, the publication of Olivia's novel. Safe Harbor was released in October to positive reviews, particularly from publications focused on young adult literature. While not an instant bestseller, it gained traction through word of mouth and the enthusiastic support of independent bookstores. The local bookshop in Ridgefield hosted Olivia's first official signing event. Mason watched with pride as she read an excerpt to the gathered crowd, answered questions thoughtfully, and signed copies with a steady hand and genuine smile. Ethan sat in the front row, beaming, occasionally whispering to his friends, "That's my sister." After the event, a woman approached Mason as he was helping the bookstore staff rearrange chairs. "You must be Mason," she said. "The lighthouse keeper." Mason smiled. "Well, a guidance counselor in real life? But yes, I recognize some similarities. I just wanted to say, my daughter is in foster care. She's 16 and she's had a rough time. Your daughter's book is the first thing that's really reached her in years." The woman's eyes glistened. She couldn't come tonight. She's still too anxious in crowds. But she wanted me to get a signed copy. She said it made her feel less alone. Mason swallowed hard. That would mean a lot to Olivia. Let me make sure you get to speak with her before you leave. Later, when he told Olivia about the encounter, her eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly why I wrote it," she said. "If it helps even one girl feel less alone." "I think it will help many," Mason assured her. "Your story resonates because it's authentic. Fictionalized, yes, but rooted in genuine emotion and experience." As Olivia's senior year of college progressed, she balanced her academic work with occasional bookstore appearances and work on a second novel. Her professors were supportive, allowing her some flexibility with deadlines when her publishing commitments required it. During winter break, Olivia brought home a surprising proposal. "I've been thinking about what happens after graduation," she said one evening as the three of them decorated the Christmas tree, still a cherished tradition. "I've been looking at MFA programs, but..." "But what?" Mason asked, untangling a string of lights. "But I'm also considering taking a gap year. My editor thinks the second book will be ready for publication about 8 months after I graduate, and there might be some promotional opportunities. Plus, I've been talking with this nonprofit that works with teens in foster care. They do creative writing workshops, and they're interested in having me lead some sessions." "That sounds perfect for you," Mason said. "Where would you live during this gap year?" Olivia hesitated. "Well, that's the thing. I was wondering, would it be okay if I moved back home for a while? Just until I figure out my next steps." "I'd contribute to expenses, of course." "Olivia," Mason said gently, "this is your home. You don't need to ask permission to live here, and you certainly don't need to contribute to expenses while you're focusing on launching your career." "Please say yes," Ethan interjected. "It would be so awesome to have you home again." Olivia laughed. "I think I just got my answer." That spring, as Olivia prepared for graduation, Mason received an unexpected email from Rachel. "You might want to see this," the subject line read. The attached link led to an article in the Hartford Courant about the release of several inmates from the state correctional facility. part of a program focusing on nonviolent offenders. Among the names listed was Patricia Bennett, Olivia's mother. Mason stared at the screen, unsure how to process this information or whether he should share it with Olivia. After years of no contact, would the reappearance of her mother disrupt the life and identity Olivia had built for herself? He called Rachel immediately. "Have you told her?" he asked without preamble. "No," Rachel replied. "I thought that should come from you. But Mason, there's more you should know. Patricia has been sober for over 2 years, according to her caseworker. She's completed multiple rehabilitation programs and a degree in accounting while incarcerated. She's asked about Olivia several times." "What about David?" Mason asked, referring to Olivia's father, still serving his sentence. His case was more serious. He had prior convictions, and the evidence suggested he was more directly involved in the arrangement with Dale Thornton. Mason rubbed his temples, feeling a headache forming. "What do you think I should do, Rach? Olivia's in such a good place now. She's about to graduate. Her book is doing well. She has plans." "I think you need to tell her," Rachel said gently. "She's an adult now, and this is her history. She deserves to know, even if she chooses not to do anything with the information." After hanging up, Mason spent an anxious day weighing his approach. That evening, he called Olivia at her dorm. "Hey, can we video chat?" he asked. "There's something I need to discuss with you." On screen, Olivia immediately sensed his discomfort. "What's wrong? Is Ethan okay?" "Ethan's fine," Mason assured her quickly. "Everyone's healthy. But Rachel shared some information with me today that concerns you, and I wanted you to hear it. Directly." As gently as possible, he told her about her mother's release. Olivia's expression remained carefully neutral throughout, but Mason could see the tension in her shoulders. "The article doesn't mention where she's living now," he concluded, "and you're under absolutely no obligation to make contact. I just felt you should know." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for telling me," she said finally. "I need some time to think about this." "Of course," Mason said. "Whatever you decide, Ethan and I support you completely." In the weeks that followed, Olivia rarely mentioned her mother, focusing instead on her final exams and graduation preparations. Mason didn't press the issue, though he worried about the additional stress this news might be causing her during an already demanding time. The day before Olivia's graduation ceremony, as Mason and Ethan were preparing to drive to Yukon, Rachel called again. "Patricia Bennett came to my office today," she said without preamble. "She wants to see Olivia." Mason closed his eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. "What did you tell her?" "I explained that Olivia is an adult now, and any contact would have to be at her initiative. I didn't give Patricia any information about Olivia's whereabouts or contact details." Rachel paused. "But she left a letter. She asked if I could pass it along." "Do you have it with you?" Mason asked. "Yes, I can bring it tomorrow. I'm still planning to attend the graduation, or I can mail it directly to Olivia. Whatever you think is best." Mason considered his options. "Bring it tomorrow. I'll give it to her after the ceremony. She should have the choice of whether to read it or not." Olivia's graduation day dawned bright and clear. Mason and Ethan, dressed in their best clothes, arrived early at the Yukon campus. Rachel and her family met them outside the auditorium where the School of Liberal Arts ceremony would take place. "Here's the letter," Rachel said quietly, slipping a sealed envelope into Mason's hand. For what it's worth, she seemed genuinely remorseful. "She's living in a halfway house in Hartford, working as a bookkeeper for a small construction company." Mason nodded, tucking the envelope into his jacket pocket. "Thanks, Rach. I'll give it to Olivia when the time feels right." The ceremony was moving, highlighted by a speech from the dean about using creative voices to make a difference in the world. When Olivia's name was called, Mason felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. How far she had come from that frightened girl on his doorstep. Afterward, amidst the crowds of celebrating graduates and families, they found Olivia, radiant in her cap and gown. "I'm so proud of you," Mason said, hugging her tightly. "We made it," Olivia replied, and Mason knew she meant all of them together. This unlikely family that had formed through crisis and grown through love. They celebrated with lunch at Olivia's favorite restaurant near campus, joined by Rachel's family and a few of Olivia's closest college friends. It was only later, when they returned to the Reynolds home and Ethan had gone to bed, exhausted from the excitement of the day, that Mason found the right moment to mention the letter. "Olivia," he said carefully as they sat on the back porch. "Rachel gave me something today. It's a letter from your mother." Olivia's expression immediately shuddered. "I see." "You don't have to read it," Mason assured her. "That's entirely your choice, but I wanted you to know it exists." He placed the envelope on the table between them. Olivia stared at it for a long moment. "Did Rachel tell you anything about her? My mother?" "Only that she's living in Hartford, working as a bookkeeper. She's been sober for over 2 years, according to her caseworker." Olivia nodded slightly, still not touching the envelope. "I've been thinking about her since you told me she was released, trying to figure out how I feel." "And?" Mason prompted gently. "And I don't know," Olivia admitted. "Part of me is still so angry. They were my parents. They were supposed to protect me, not—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "But another part of me wonders if she's changed, if prison and sobriety have helped her become someone different from the person who let my father sell me to pay gambling debts." "Those are legitimate feelings," Mason said. "All of them." "What would you do?" Olivia asked suddenly. "If you were me?" Mason considered the question carefully. "I think I would want to know what she has to say, even if I decided not to respond or pursue any kind of relationship. But Olivia, this is entirely your decision. Whatever you choose, it doesn't change who you are or the life you've built for yourself." Olivia finally reached for the envelope, holding it without opening it. "I think I'll read it later, when I'm alone." She looked up at Mason. "Thank you for always being honest with me, even when the truth is complicated." "Always," Mason promised. The following morning, Mason found Olivia at the kitchen table early, nursing a cup of coffee. The envelope lay open beside her. "You read it?" he asked gently, pouring his own coffee. Olivia nodded. "She's apologizing. Says she's been sober for 2 years and 4 months. She's working through a 12-step program and making amends is part of that." She traced the rim of her mug with her finger. "She says she understands if I never want to see her again, but she'd like a chance to apologize in person someday." "How do you feel about that?" Mason asked, careful to keep his tone neutral. "Conflicted," Olivia admitted. "I've spent so many years being angry, feeling betrayed. It's become part of who I am in some ways. The girl whose parents sold her to pay a debt." She gave a humorless laugh. "It even helped shape my identity as a writer." "Meeting her wouldn't erase what happened," Mason pointed out. "No, but it might complicate how I feel about it." Olivia looked up at him. "I've been working on my second novel. It's about a girl reconnecting with her estranged mother. Fiction, obviously, but art often reflects our deeper psychological preoccupations," Mason finished for her. "Maybe writing this story is a way of exploring possibilities without committing to them in real life." Olivia nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I think I might want to meet her. Eventually. Not right away. I need to finish this book. First, sort out my own feelings through the writing process." 6 months after her college graduation, Olivia sat across from her mother at a small cafe in Hartford. The meeting, arranged through Rachel, who served as an intermediary, had been carefully planned. Mason waited at a bookstore 2 blocks away, ready to provide support if needed. Patricia Bennett looked older than her 45 years, her face lined with the aftermath of addiction and incarceration. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred. "Her coffee." "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I know I don't deserve it." Olivia nodded, maintaining her composure. "I read your letter. You said you wanted to apologize in person." Patricia took a deep breath. "What we did, what I allowed to happen, was unforgivable. I was so deep in addiction that I lost sight of the most important thing in my life. You. Not a day goes by that I don't feel the shame of that." "It was hard," Olivia said simply. "Knowing your own parents valued gambling debts more than your safety." Patricia flinched, but didn't deny it. "I can't change the past, I wish I could. But I've been working hard to become someone different, someone better. I just wanted you to know that." "Why now?" Olivia asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" "Partly because of my recovery program," Patricia admitted. "Making amends is an important step, but also because I saw your book in the prison library." Her eyes filled with tears. "I recognized our story, even with the changes. I was so proud and so ashamed at the same time." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, painful but necessary. Olivia asked hard questions about those final days in their home, about what her parents had really known about Dale Thornton's intentions. Patricia answered honestly, refusing to minimize her culpability. "I don't expect forgiveness," Patricia said as they prepared to leave. "I just hope knowing that I've changed might help you heal somehow." Olivia studied her mother's face. "I'm not ready to forgive yet," she said honestly. "But I'm glad we talked. I needed to see you, to understand that you're a real person who made terrible choices, not just the villain in my story." "That's more than I deserve," Patricia said. "Your book, it helped me understand what you went through. You're an incredible writer." "Thank you," Olivia said, accepting the compliment without emotion. "I should go. Would you consider meeting again someday?" Patricia asked hesitantly. Olivia paused. "I don't know. I need time." As she walked to the bookstore where Mason waited, Olivia felt a curious lightness. The meeting hadn't provided the dramatic catharsis of movies or novels, but it had shifted something within her, transformed her parents from looming specters into flawed, broken humans who had failed her terribly. Mason looked up anxiously when she entered the bookstore. "How did it go?" "It was clarifying," Olivia said after a moment. "She's different from how I remembered. Smaller, sadder." Mason nodded, understanding the complex emotions behind her words. "Do you regret meeting her?" "No," Olivia said decisively. "It was the right thing for me to do. I don't know if I'll see her again, but I'm glad I saw her today." On the drive home, Olivia stared out the window, processing the encounter. "The strangest part," she said eventually, "was realizing that if they hadn't done what they did, if they hadn't made those terrible choices, I might never have ended up with you and Ethan." Mason glanced at her. "Life takes strange turns sometimes." "The worst moment of my life led to the best change," Olivia mused. "I'm not grateful for what they did, but I am grateful for where I ended up." That evening, Olivia disappeared into her room and wrote furiously until dawn, the words flowing in a cathartic stream. The meeting with her mother had unlocked something in her second novel, a dimension of complexity she had been struggling to capture. Over the following months, Olivia's gap year unfolded with purpose. She completed her second novel, titled Reconciliation, which explored themes of forgiveness and healing through the lens of a fictional mother-daughter relationship. She also began leading writing workshops for teenagers in foster care, helping them find their voices through creative expression. "You're making such a difference for these kids," Mason observed after driving her home from one such workshop. "They really respond to you." Because I've been where they are, Olivia said. Not exactly, but close enough. They can tell I'm not just spouting platitudes. Are you thinking about continuing this work? Mason asked. It seems to fulfill you, in a way that's different from your writing. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. I've been considering combining the two somehow. Maybe pursuing that MFA and focusing on teaching creative writing as therapy. The workshops have shown me how powerful writing can be as a healing tool. As spring approached, bringing the 1-year anniversary of her graduation, Olivia received news that her second novel had been accepted for publication. They love it, she told Mason and Ethan over dinner. My editor says it's even stronger than Safe Harbor, more nuanced, more emotionally complex. That's amazing, Ethan exclaimed. His voice had begun to deepen at 14, cracking occasionally, in a way that mortified him but amused his family. 2 books published before you're 23. The meeting with your mother really influenced this one, didn't it? Mason asked perceptively. Olivia nodded. I was able to write a more honest story after seeing her. Less black and white, more shades of gray. That weekend, a letter arrived from the University of Vermont offering Olivia admission to their MFA program with a teaching assistantship that would cover most of her tuition. Vermont, Mason said as they discussed the offer. That's not too far. You could still come home regularly. 3 hours, Olivia confirmed. Close enough for visits, far enough for independence. She smiled wryly. The perfect distance for this stage of life, I think. As summer arrived, bringing warm evenings perfect for porch sitting, Mason and Olivia found themselves in their familiar spots on the swing. Ethan was at a friend's house for a sleepover, leaving them with a rare opportunity for uninterrupted conversation. I've been thinking about everything that's happened these past 4.5 years, Olivia said, gently pushing the swing with her foot. How one phone call changed 3 lives forever. 4, Mason corrected gently. Don't forget Rachel. She's pretty proud of her role in all this. Olivia smiled. 4 lives, then. It's like dominoes, isn't it? One action leading to another, leading to another. I've thought about that night many times, Mason admitted. What if I'd said no to Rachel? What if I'd been too overwhelmed with my own problems to help? But you didn't, Olivia said simply. You said yes. You opened your door and your heart. Best decision I ever made, Mason said sincerely. Mine too, Olivia replied. Trusting you, staying, becoming part of this family. She touched the star necklace she still wore daily. I came here with nothing but a backpack and a lifetime of reasons not to trust anyone. And somehow, you and Ethan broke through all that. You let us in, Mason pointed out. That took courage. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching fireflies emerge in the deepening twilight. I want you to know something, Olivia said finally. No matter where life takes me, Vermont for my MFA, wherever I go after that, this will always be home. You and Ethan will always be my family. We know, Mason assured her, and we'll always be here for you, cheering you on, celebrating your successes, supporting you through the hard times. Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of affection that had become natural over the years. I never imagined my life could turn out like this. Published author, graduate school ahead, a real family who loves me. Sometimes it still doesn't feel real. It's real, Mason promised. You earned every bit of it. As stars began to appear overhead, Mason reflected on the extraordinary journey they had shared. The frightened girl who had arrived that autumn night had blossomed into an accomplished young woman with a bright future. And his own life, which had seemed so burdened and incomplete after Caroline's death, had expanded in ways he never could have imagined. The seemingly simple act of answering a late-night phone call had set in motion a chain of events that transformed 3 fractured lives into a family bound by choice rather than blood, a bond that had proven even stronger for having been forged in adversity. We've come a long way, haven't we? Olivia murmured. Together, Mason agreed. And that's how we'll continue. And in that quiet moment on the porch of the home they had built together, both knew with absolute certainty that taking in a desperate 17-year-old girl had indeed been the blessing none of them had seen coming. A blessing that continued to unfold in unexpected ways with each passing year, touching not only their lives but the lives of countless others through Olivia's writing and work. It was proof that sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive in the most unlikely packages, at the most unexpected moments, and that opening your door to someone in need can lead to the most profound kind of homecoming for everyone involved. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.